What is the seller's property disclosure? The seller's property disclosure. If you're selling your house, you should be writing up a seller's property disclosure. In Colorado, we have a standard form that you fill out with different sections, and it's to the best of your knowledge of any issues, as well as how old things are, like the HVAC and the appliances and all of that. Legally, you are bounded to disclose any known defects and issues in the house. Without doing so and selling your house, that could cause a legal dispute where you could lose a lot of money. So you just want to admit it right up front, any issues in the past in the seller's property disclosure. If you haven't lived in the place and you really don't know anything, you may not fill it out, but for the most part, you should be filling out anything you do know from prior people who've owned it, anything you happen to know, any complaints from tenants, or if you're buying a house, this is one of the things you want to get from the seller to find out if there were any defects or issues that need to be addressed or looked at. I like to make sure I get the seller property disclosure before the inspection so that I can tell the inspector specifically to look at this or check this out. There may be an issue with this. For the buyer, when you sign a seller's property disclosure, you're simply acknowledging that you have received it, not that you accept any of the conditions that are specified in there. That's part of your inspection process that you can look at, address, and come back and negotiate. So it's just acknowledging that you have received it. So let's take a look at the seller's property disclosure and what's in it. The first section is the structural issues. Here you'll designate if you know of any structural issues, any moisture issues, damage from some kind of pests, also damage from wind, fire, hail, flood, any settling issues that you're aware of, window problems such as not being able to open or close one particular window, which could have something to do with some shifting. And then there's a blank spot on most of these sections for you to add your own for customization of anything that may not be specified specifically in the form that you can make sure you acknowledge. The next section is the appliances, and here you want to put the dates of how old they are. Next section is electrical, and so you'll specify what details you know about your electrical. For really old homes, there may be aluminum wiring. If you're aware of that, that's kind of a big deal. It's a bit of a fire hazard, and it's something that should be updated. A lot of homes have already been updated. If you have 220 volts in the garage, that's a big deal with electric vehicles. So specify that. That's one of those bonus things. Like, yay, I'm glad to see that. Also, security systems, lighting systems, garage doors, and how many garage door openers you have, in-wall speaker systems, intercoms, all of that. Then there's mechanical. There are homes actually in Boulder that have elevators. So elevators can have a lot of issues and they're very expensive to fix. A lot of condo complexes have them. So here, it's not if it's in the condo complex, although you can specify that because it could be good if someone's in a wheelchair or slightly handicapped, that there is access to an elevator. It's also nice when you're moving in that there's an elevator if you're on the third floor. Then we have ventilation, your HVAC system, heating, if there's air conditioning and what type, if it's a mini split or if it's forced air, if you have baseboard heat or if you have a boiler. All those details are really good to specify here so that the buyers would know what they're getting into, as well as the age, because there's a certain lifeline for things on how long they last. Air conditioners have switched over their refrigerants, so that's a big deal that you can no longer buy the old refrigerants. If you have one of those old systems and something goes really wrong, people typically would have to upgrade to a whole new system. That's a big expense that they should be aware of. Furnaces, some of the old ones last longer than the new ones. I bought a house once with a 40-year-old furnace that was still working. I still negotiated some money off because it was so old. I kept that house 15 years and ended up selling it like with a 60-year-old furnace. It was still a solid furnace, but they're definitely not as efficient as some of the newer ones. And so specifying the efficiency as well is very helpful. If it saves people money because it's a more efficient furnace or air conditioner, that's really good to know. Then we have water. So what kind of water do you have? Is from the city, a cistern, or possibly a well? And if there's a well, what's the permit number? And is the well shared with anyone else? For sewer, we're looking at the septic versus the city. For drainage, is there any flooding issues? Do you notice that there are pools of water somewhere along the yard or in the house? That happens after rainstorms, snow. And then improvements, stains on the carpet or issues with the hardwoods or the walls or anything else that needs some attention or needs to be pointed out. Zoning and legal. So here we're looking at, are there easements? Sometimes the driveway is shared with other homeowners. There may be city violations in there. Anything that you're aware of should be specified in here. Issues with the parking situation, where the parking can be. If there's any access problems for getting to the parking space. Then we have a section on environment, if any of these pertain for you, and HOA section as well. So if it is a condo townhome, they definitely probably have an HOA. There are also housing communities that do have a communal HOA. Sometimes it's for a swimming pool or park or just for the open space areas that they're maintaining. There may be covenants for particular areas that prevent people from putting gardens in the front yard. And then there's another section, catch off, for anything else that may need to be disclosed. At the bottom of our documents in Colorado for the seller's property disclosure, there's an advisory to the buyer to designate that this information is to the seller's best knowledge. And we always do an inspection. It's very rare for someone not to do an inspection on a home. So it's up to the buyer to do their own due diligence. There could be a major leak that the seller is actually not aware of. If you like this content and want to keep learning more, please subscribe to my channel.